Welcome back. Well, today I'm honored to introduce you to one of my dear friends, Candice. Candice has such an extraordinary heart. Her love spills into the presence of anyone around her, so I'm excited for you to feel some of that warmth. Anyway, I really enjoyed our conversation, and I hope you do too. And now I bring you Kandice Knoelk. So I was feeling melancholy yesterday, and I had already had on the schedule that Candice would be coming up Sunday, so today. And I had the thought, I need to cry to Candice. Uh, I'm going to see if she wants to take Molly with me and just love on each other.
And I said, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate Candice for many things. I mean, above all, her heart. But she has an intellectual depth. She can play with concepts and maps and memory, holding threads, concentration. She's sharp. So I enjoy surrounding myself with people like that. You'd have long-winded conversations.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so thank you for joining me.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I love you so much. This is a lot of fun. Do your podcasting group or people who listen to your podcast know that the setup is like it is right now? Is it normally like this? We're sitting cross-legged on the floor with a mic in front of us, and there's a fireplace, and there's art and plants all around the house. It's not like we're sitting in a recording studio.
Yeah,
It's just
some sterile.
in your own home.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, such a weird, funky,
Yeah.
eclectic home. I want to meet the guy that built this.
Mm.
Anyway, there's many things I want to talk to you about.
Mm.
So we'll see how many we can cover. We might have to do a take 2 or 3 or 4 or 5.
Okay.
But can you give us like a potted bio real quick? Who's Candice? What's
Potted bio. What does potted mean?
like
Like a
short
plant?
version of your intellectual,
Okay.
moral,
Oof. I love that. I
spiritual
love that you say that I should
background?
wrap that up into a short version.
Yes.
Okay.
And we can dig from there, but
Okay.
yeah, just give us a broad
Okay. Well, I think in
who's
um
Candice? Eagle Eye.
eagle eye. So she, I, it, they, that is just a love bug. Has been
True.
from the minute that my tiny feet came out of a womb and onto this planet, like just
Spreading joy.
alarmingly so to some people,
Yeah.
and so yeah, a full-hearted innocence towards love that is hard to describe, and I can't overstate how big it is.
Nor I
And
about her.
and so that's the core of me. I'm here to love, I'm here to play. um this existence and experience is all about cultivating play and loving people. And so I kicked off growing up in an LDS faith, or the Latter-day Saints, or the Mormons. And then in my 30s, pursued the opportunity to step away from that program and that way of thinking. I'm sure people who are part of that church probably hate that I call it a program. It's not very kind, but I think of all things as programs.
Sure.
In terms of just the way, a framework that the mind can
Software,
think through. But
whatever concept you want to use.
yeah, frameworks is also another one.
Mhm.
But so this is my bio. I'm a love bug.
But so what about
Intellectual. I grew up believing that I was not smart, had a huge breakthrough in college with an educational psychology class where I realized that my mind was fucking awesome and that the only thing holding me back from learning anything that I wanted to learn was my belief in myself. Which sounds very Tony Robbins now that I'm saying it to you with the microphone over us, but it turns out it's true. Like it's that the minute the other really powerful paradigm that sets people back in progressing in anything, away from a church into a church, is this phrase: "You can't outperform your perception of yourself."
Mm.
So if I grew up, and it was an inherited message of
Yeah.
like Candace isn't smart.
Yeah.
Um, barely made it out of high school, barely made it into college. Was going to get a teaching degree in history and mathematics. And then my life shifted wildly after my dad was diagnosed with cancer and had a 3-year battle with it. I just needed to be anywhere else. And so I moved to Salt Lake City to go through my own grieving process
From Idaho.
from Idaho, and wandered into working for an online university called Western Governors University. And that, in terms of like my some of my intellectual growth and um and sharpness, is born out of working for and finishing my business degrees with that organization. Like, but it was also more just being a part of the organization because I got a lot of opportunity to just.
You did a master's program with them?
I did a master's program, but I was also a project manager
Yeah.
for them. And it was such a great time of professional development. Like
Mm.
the degrees are cool, but most of the skills that I'm taking with me into wherever I go next,
Yeah.
um,
Universal.
yeah, are from working for the company
Mm.
and being afforded so many opportunities to be brave and to step up and to see what was really capable of. And so,
Mm.
um, and then so there's
They treated you really well, I guess.
they did.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an extraordinary company. Worked for them for 11 years and was a senior leader managing complex $1 million projects for the nonprofit, and just kind of seeing what a badass I've become, and
Owning that.
yeah, and
Mm.
then that badassery is also married by years and years of just deep curiosity and wanting to read everything. Um, and so wanting to read everything, a heart that's completely centered on helping people feel seen and loved, and not through like any kind of like I don't have a desire to start like a training program or anything like that. I just want this. Like I want to sit one on one with the people that come in and out of my life and give them the love that is here.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like that's fuel enough for me. And so yeah, so I walk around this earth asking for people to be put into my path so that I can just sit and hold space with them, remind them that they're extraordinary, remind them not to believe everything that they think, um, and that they're not who they thought they were, and just see their radiance.
So you were raised Mormon
Yes.
in Salt Lake.
In Idaho Falls.
Oh, in Idaho Falls, that's
Mhm.
right.
But very
Similar.
similar,
Yeah.
very similar, yeah,
Yeah.
in terms of cultural
Yeah. Mormon culture.
influences.
Yeah. Yeah. Predominant. I mean, we're talking
Yeah,
what, 90% where you were?
yeah, yeah, oh yeah, very much.
Yeah. Okay, so when did you leave?
I officially took my name off of the church records last year. Um, but and so that's like official left. Like I'm not considered a member of their church anymore. Um, prior to taking that step, I would say I started to it's fun to answer this question because I can look back through my life and see where the seeds of cognitive dissonance started and how I still stayed in the church for like a decade. And then somewhere around 2017, um, my departure from the church was very like just kind of me being like, you know what? I don't want to go today. So I'm not going to church today. And then just
Mm.
being, but I had also was doing this after having done some inner work that like I just don't have shame tapes running in my head
Mm.
anymore. They're gone. They don't serve me.
Oh,
And so
so happy.
so now yeah, it's wild to get to that space where um it just is not even a piece of default thinking.
Yeah,
I would have
good,
to work for it
good.
um, to think with the flavor of shame. So now that, and I'm in that state, that is a state of being I've been in for a while. So I'm in that state while I'm also actually taking space from going to church. So I didn't like be like, I am not going to church today. And then I would have to spiral down through a shame spiral because that's where good Christian Mormon practitioners go. And like, you're wrong and bad that you didn't though. Because the paradigm is that there's good and bad,
Yeah,
um, right and wrong,
right.
and I had been taught that it's the wrong choice not to go to church.
Yeah,
But it's cool to know that I had at least enough self-love to be like, you know what? I want to honor this. I want to not go to church, and I'm not going to dip into some false belief that I'm wrong or bad because of it. And that's just not going one Sunday. Um, and I think over time, I just kind of continued to quietly sneak back from it. There were longer intervals of time between me actually going to church on Sunday. And I would try to be very open with myself and examine too what was going on with me, because I think something that is important to know is that I was a very happy, shiny Mormon. Like I had no
yeah,
problems.
yeah.
No one,
Lovely.
no one offended me. None of the doctrine offended me. Like I was thriving in that framework. And if I didn't, for some reason, shift out of it, I probably would still be thriving in it.
Yeah,
Um, and so, but where things started to get challenging for me is that being sitting in a Sunday school class, and this is common in a lot of how people talk. I'm sure I still do it to this day, but the conversations always dripped into us, them type conversations, us
sure.
members of the church, them not
Mm.
members of the church.
Yeah,
Um, and so this little heart of mine, which had just been growing brighter and stronger every day, was like, would do what I call the empathy barometer in those discussions. So I'd be sitting in the Sunday school class, I'd listen to the discussion that's flowing and just kind of internally watch it to see if we were in a place of high empathy or low empathy.
mm,
And it just kept going to places of low empathy, um, of just like, we're right, they're wrong.
mm.
Um, and so
These
that,
black and white
yeah,
frameworks. Mm,
yeah. And so that kind of stuff, it would just wiggle me inside. I love connection, and I don't see very many boundaries between me and anyone else in this world.
mm,
Um,
mm, mm.
and so to be sitting in a classroom that is drawing definitive boundaries between believers and non-believers of a particular type of Christian faith, um, it just really started to make me wiggle. And I didn't want to be in those discussions. They weren't serving me anymore. Like I wanted to be in discussions where we talked about how people of all faiths um, have are deserving of love, and not one is better than the other. And that I say this all the time, there's many paths to healing and growth in
All
this
roads
life
lead to the ocean.
as there are humans walking on the planet.
Yeah,
And so started to take space in 2017. Last year, 2024, officially took my name off the records.
yeah. And you're how old?
I'm 38.
So it's a lot of conditioning to undo.
So much
Yeah,
more than I ever considered. Like something will just happen,
yeah,
um and I'll have a cry or a somatic release. I still get a little triggered inside at the idea of being led by men.
yeah.
Um
We were talking earlier about
yeah,
books. You asked me if it's
yeah,
wrong that you try to read from only women. I said no.
yeah. Women
I,
philosophers, and
I stock Rivers reading list with
yeah, because it's not
women
that I
authors.
don't want to hear what the extraordinary brilliant men's minds have had about philosophy and life and all of
Right,
that.
but
It's just that I miss my voice in that conversation.
totally. Yeah,
And um it's wild to talk to women who are still part of the Mormon church. And I don't, because I everybody is in their lived experience exactly as they're meant to be. And so it's not for me to go to somebody and be like, because what's the point of that? That's what made me leave, is being like,
preaching.
yeah, is pointing and being like, my way of seeing things is better than your way of seeing things.
Yeah.
So then if one individual then leaves their church and now they're on the other side, but they're saying the exact same message back, my way of seeing things is better than your way of
Right.
seeing things. Why did you even leave in the first place?
Right.
Like, but and I see that a lot with some of my Mormon friends
A
is,
lot of the backlash,
yeah, of like them
you swing too far the other
coming
way.
out of it and then needing to turn around and be like, you guys need to see that I'm right and you're wrong.
Mhm.
Um,
And it's often a stage, like, I
yeah.
went through it when I was a teenager.
Okay. Well, I didn't go through
I
that
know
stage.
you're
And so,
at a much more responsible and
yeah.
adult.
Well, and maybe this will also help me have more patience and empathy for
Sure.
others who are also unbundling from
Oh,
a
sure,
program.
sure.
But yeah, 38 years of just being told that I really don't matter and that I'm secondary
Yeah.
in the hierarchy of divine
The
being.
shadows sit and take your place.
Yeah.
Pretty, but not too pretty to
Yeah.
tempt.
And or like this weird notion that I don't need to be visible because I am a sacred divine thing. Like they talk about Heavenly
Right.
Mother is not talked about because she's
She's
so
so
sacred.
egoless and sacred.
Yeah. And so it kind of pins women into these two pigeonholes of no, you don't get to be included in the conversation without being beholden to a bishop or a man first. Like there's no woman in that organization that is just a leader of her own sovereignty.
Exactly.
Um, all of it always has to be reported back to a man. So even if you're the president of a relief society,
You're reporting to men.
yeah. And to be fair, there there are many really great men in the church. And
There are.
so I'm not like
And
angry at that.
women and men who are trying to change it from within.
Yes.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. And in the situations where like a relief society president still has to report to a bishop, sometimes there are very forward thinking bishops who are like, hey,
Yeah.
this is a formality. I just want to see you lead. Like, I'm not here to
Right.
guide you or tell you or
Right.
give you approval. Just go do what you think would be good for helping the people in your relief society, all these other women.
Right.
So there are great people that do that, but there's also the egoic where,
Yeah.
and then at the end of the day, like it just would be nice if it didn't exist at all. That if men and women were working in partnership
Yeah.
in a Christian faith without any kind of patriarchy
Preset.
involved,
Yeah.
patriarchy and hierarchy. So these days, like there are still some places where I'm just a little bit like, oh, that was actually pretty messed up. Um, and then also being like, oh my God, I can't believe I went along with this for so long. Um, and then I have moments of like, well, I believe everything that exists in this conscious experience that we're having as humans is here for a divine reason. And so even though the church didn't work for me, it does work for others.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's a little bit rare for people who leave the church. Like,
Yeah, they swing too far the other way, but as you and I were mentioning earlier, uh yeah, when we leave a dogma, we're often like, fuck the dogma,
yeah,
but we forget that we stand on its shoulders,
yes, it
you
was
know?
this brilliant religious foundation that kept me safe and well
Yeah.
for until it was time to just leave it. And I like what you said. Yeah, that's often people will be like, fuck that dogma. And for me, my experience was, hmm, this doesn't seem to be working for me anymore. No hard feelings? No hard feelings. Cool. See you later. And just walking away. Like I didn't feel a call to like I didn't need to, and I'm not saying that this is something that everyone needs to do. I just know within my own experience, this is what my exit from the dogma was just like a an acknowledgement that it's not working for myself and between it and that organization, which was just me just hypothetically in my mind's eye giving it the nod and being like, okay, not going anymore, and then pursuing a new path. Um, but some people, I think that's part of the processing is to get really angry at parts of it. And even though I'm not a very angry person, I think what has been given to me is friendships, really good company, and those friends who have stepped away from the dogma that they grew up in, and um, and they have angry parts. And so because I get to sit with them, they help me have angry parts
Mm.
for a time. Like I got on a 4-hour phone call with a former mission companion, Jamie, and we she on the phone call, she's like, "Have you ever used the Bite
Mission companion.
Mission Companion?"
So
Yeah.
Candace served an LDS mission for a year and a half
Mhm.
in
The
the
Netherlands.
Netherlands.
Yeah. But this mission companion calls and she's the one who was like, "I just heard from another mission friend that you are no longer part of the church." And she was like, "Candace, that's crazy." And she'd been out of the church for like 4 years. And then I was like, "Jamie, no one's more surprised than me." Like I was so happy there. Um, but it just felt like I said, I was in a house and then my values and my desire to give love beyond the constraints of where they said love needed to go got
Yeah,
so big.
yeah.
I just kind of
First,
I just kind of popped out of it one day.
yeah,
It was so weird to look back and be like, "Oh, I just sort of popped out." And ever since it's been so glorious to like see this ability to love without boundaries.
yes.
Ability to love wholly and completely without labeling someone as member, not member, um,
Just
or somebody else's ideology.
you are, you exist. That's enough.
That's enough. That's enough. And just giving love. So yeah, that kind of all happened in 2017. Um, but I was sort of secretly away from it. Like I didn't
Sure.
announce to anybody, I'm leaving the church. I really
Those
didn't.
things have to kind of be done in steps, yeah, like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or sometimes not done at all. Like honestly, my
Or
choice to follow my heart on a different path is really no one else's business. And for me, like to go and announce it to my family would be just some egoic part wanting to start a fight. Like I don't need anybody to talk me out of something my heart knows.
sure. Well, I mean, it's also fine to communicate to your family who you are and what you believe, and
Yes, it is. But and for me, the communication of such has been
yeah, not well received.
well, not well received. And I mean, of course, when you're in a dogma, the dogma teaches you how to feel and think and believe about the people who
Exactly.
are leaving it.
Right.
So I can't, the people, my mom and my little sister, um, and I'm the middle of 7 kids, and my dad has passed on, but um, they're responding from a place of what that program teaches them to say. Like,
Mhm.
and it's so sad that the way members think about people leaving is this story about how people don't want to follow the rules, that they have been offended in some way. It's almost like a primary version of the real lived experience.
Yeah.
Um, because to like it almost makes it seem like the choice to leave the religion you grew up in was a snap decision.
Right.
That you just like, but the truth is that it is a complex unbundling
Yeah. Yeah.
of
Yeah.
and like of a reality. And nobody just chooses that because they're offended. Like nobody chooses that just because like they had a whim anger tantrum one day. Like it's there's something that they just know is fundamentally wrong if they stay. And to just go through leaving,
Yeah.
it's tough. And I
Follow
had it
your gut.
way easier than some people have it. Like my mom acted and behaved according to the program, came up with awful stories about why I was leaving that were wildly inaccurate, and but gave me opportunity to reflect on why it was painful for me on the inside and see what needed to be loved and what needed to be let go.
Mm.
And we're still kind of in that process with my mom in the church. One of the things that I liked about Quest is somewhere near the end, there's an opportunity to kind of use the numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4 to communicate with a person.
Okay.
And each number represents something of an interaction. 1 is like just completely avoiding eye contact.
Okay.
2 is only maintaining on contact but not touching. 3 is like some touching, like something like palm on palm, just like a handshake, high five. And then 4 is a hug. And as you get into the exercise, they tell you all votes 1 through 4 are valid as long as they're authentic, and always honor the vote of
Mm.
the lowest voter. And so there's some things that I pull from that in regards to stepping away from the religion I grew up in and my relationship with my mom. is that when I am in town and I'm visiting her or I'm on the phone with her in her sphere, I'm honoring her vote. Like I know it's clear that I'm not a member of the church, but I know that it's something that she treasures, she loves, and I love her, so I want to treasure what she treasures. So I'll ask her, yeah, about what she's studying, like in the scriptures. I'll ask her, or I'll even go to church too, and just like I'm there feeling meta loving kindness
You're better than me.
and oh really? You're not there yet?
I mean, no, I will for like events or if she's like speaking or
Yeah.
yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my mom lives in Idaho, so I'll be home with her.
Oh,
Like when I am home and she
oh,
wants to go to church on Sunday, it is a
yeah.
special occasion.
Oh,
Like it's
yeah, I
not
get
like me
that.
going every Sunday. No, because I have my Sundays back.
Yeah,
Fine.
yeah,
Um, and
yeah. No, Sundays. Are you
oh
kidding me
my
that they took
God,
away a
that's like a
a
whole day of
week?
reading.
Yeah,
Yeah.
weekend. You only have two of them,
Oh my gosh.
and the other one gets tied up in fucking Sunday school.
Yeah, well, not just Sunday school, but loads of social obligation.
Yeah,
If you're a church leader, like the whole day is just
chalk.
go, go,
Yeah.
go. Um, but with my mom, myself, and the church, and this idea of honoring the vote, I feel like I go and I honor her vote. Um, I honor where she's at. And the part that I'm still dealing with is that that's not reciprocated.
Mm,
That my vote to live in the way that I live is not honored by her at all.
right.
It's not treasured. She doesn't see it as I want to treasure what my daughter treasures. So I'm going to ask her about. She still thinks that like the Vipassana meditation center is just like a Buddhist religious foundation or like factory or something like that. And so like but it's okay like
Yeah,
to just find our path forward. We have some really good ground now, some healthy boundaries between us,
yeah,
and I've been gifted with soul family like you and others that I can talk about these deeper things, like how everything in my mind just goes right back to love and and all of the other parts of
yeah. Not this.
this that are unbound by the framework of the
Yeah,
church.
silly. Yeah, River's going through this too with her mom. Her mom is an incredible woman, just the strongest human. Gave birth to 18
Yeah.
children, raised 13. And yeah, she's just a no bullshitter and
Mhm.
just good intentioned. Seeing it from your mom, each of your mom's perspective, and your mom may be different from River's mom, but
Mm.
when moms believe and really believe that you lose a seat at their table of
Yeah.
eternity, like
Yeah.
that's some heavy shit
It's
on.
painful.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can't even imagine. Um, but that just makes me angry at the dogma that teaches something like that.
yeah,
Um, but I do see it like from my mom's perspective. Here's the thing though, in the midst of the sorrow of feeling that you have lost your child for all eternity, what you choose to do and how you choose to behave has an impact. And my mom chose to behave in a way that was very painful for me,
yeah.
which was to say things like Candice is bitter because she's still single, so that's why she's leaving, or
Mm,
um,
right.
it's okay. It was a really great reflective moment. I learned so much from it, like,
Mm,
and it's helped me have a very healthy, sovereign relationship from my parents. And that's also part of the human experience is
yeah,
like we grow up with our parents, and at some point there has to be this declaration of independence. And for
right.
most people, that comes in middle school sometimes and like teenage years or in their
Yeah,
early 20s. Mine just happened to come at 38. I was in no way like a mama's girl, but I was very much like under the rule of expectation from my parents.
yeah,
And so I understand how painful that must be, like thinking that I'm lost. And I never want anybody to suffer or live in pain, but I also can't not follow my own heart, which says that
yeah,
I've gained everything I was meant to gain from being in that paradigm.
yeah. No, you
Um,
can't live for their beliefs.
yeah.
Is your life.
And so Um, there are probably moms who have had people leave their church, their kids leave the church, but those moms are still able to meet it with so much grace, to not let their identity be wrapped up in it, because it's not sometimes, and also just to be like, it's just cool when you meet a Mormon who is like, fuck the program that tells me I'm supposed to think, believe, or to testify you back. Like,
Yeah, parrot.
what if I just sit with you and say, hey, following your heart is really important, and I trust you. I trust you with your own salvation. And that's one of those things where these dogmatic religions start to lose the beat on a real profound truth, which is that you are trusted
Mm.
to navigate this life and be a human. And that's it. Like, that's it.
You know what? As you're saying that, just feeling tons of gratitude for my dad because he never was like a John, why aren't you going to church or
Yeah.
doing the song and dance?
Yeah.
But always like, are you being kind? Are you,
Mm,
that's what,
that's extraordinary. Yeah.
yeah,
That's super rare
yeah.
to have a parent do that.
He told me this story recently when he was on his mission. He served in England, which is a tough crowd.
Mhm.
And so they would often go hang out with like a friar or bishop or I don't know the title.
Mhm.
And Guy tells my dad and his companion this joke. Peter's at the gate welcoming a new crowd to heaven.
Mhm.
And they start like going on a tour and Peter's showing them, well, look over here. We have
Mhm.
the Baptist neighborhood, and in this neighborhood, you see the Muslims, and then he suddenly hushes everyone and says, shh, 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 shh. And he said, can't talk while we walk through this neighborhood, okay? And they're all tippy toeing, and finally, some guy's like, wait, why, why can't we?
Mhm.
And Peter said, because the Mormons live here and they don't know anyone else is here.
They don't know anyone else is here. Oh, and to even contemplate anyone else being here is such a blasphemy type thing. It's inconceivable when you're in the framework.
Yeah,
And so, um, I can't get mad at people for believing the way they believe, because I believed that way when I was in the framework. And so, um, to my very logical, analytical mind, it seems like such a waste to be mad at somebody, um, for operating in accordance with their program.
right.
Um, and so it has been painful with my mom.
What did you just tell me about a friend of yours? You got to witness her wish something on her daughter or her
Oh,
child?
yes, I loved that. My friend Robin, I asked her how she was doing because her son was going through impact training right now, and she turned to me, and I wanted to know how he's doing, because to trust that you can send your kid into this space where he's going to be face to face with his ego and working through big emotions like grief and anger and fear. Um, that's a big trust fall for a mom
Yeah.
to send their kid into that space.
Yeah.
And she looked at me and she said, when I asked her how he was doing and how she was doing, and she said, it is one of the greatest moments being a mother, that I get to watch my child fall completely in love with himself.
Mm,
And that was it. That's
mm,
all she wanted for her kid. For whatever else the fuck he wants to do with his life,
yes.
but to just be so in love with himself. And that's, I
Not in a narcissistic way,
not in a narcissistic way, in a
wholeness way, which,
wholeness way. I love that, and my brain logged it away for when I get to have a kid, to just be like, all I want for you in this life, no matter what, is for you to fall in love with yourself
mm,
over and over again, because that is also what's brought me the greatest joy in my
yeah,
life.
to see your kid just happy and at peace
Mm.
and yeah, love themselves.
Yeah. Isn't there a
Amazing.
I think I recall from a 10-day silent meditation sit when they were doing a Dharma talk, like, and you probably would be able to reference this better than I would, that there's like a story about how the Buddha taught like a king and a queen, and then the king was coming out of his meditation chamber and came across the queen who was also coming out of her meditation chamber. I love that everybody just has meditation chambers. I want
Naturally.
one of those.
Yeah.
Um, and the king looks at her and he says, "Who do you love most in the world?" And I think that SN Goenka like mentions he's like, no, this is the king. Like he just lob her head off if he doesn't like what she says.
Mhm.
But she looks at him and she says, "Me, I love me most." And then he smiles and he's like, "That's exactly how I feel. I love me most." And so it isn't a narcissistic love. It's this like and it's so funny because we have to put the word radical self-acceptance on there because it feels so radical to deprogram from whatever we need to program to give ourselves full self-love and acceptance.
Yeah.
But it's really not that radical at all. It
It's
just
not.
we've just been so far from it that we have to view it through a lens of like it being audacious and radical so that we can get to it.
Yeah.
But I look forward to the day where that's just it's not audacious or radical to have that kind of self-love.
Yeah.
That's just the norm.
There's a funny story there. One of the first big Buddhist conferences in the United States, Dalai Lama attended, and so he's meeting with all these teachers, and someone raises their hand and asks what to do with self-worth
Mm,
stuff in themselves and in their clients, and the Dalai Lama didn't understand. He's like, "Wait, what do you mean?" And so he went back and forth with his translator for good 10 minutes, and finally once he was like understood our position,
mm.
it's like, "What? No, like we're all precious."
No. That it was just so foreign a concept to him, this
Yeah,
idea of not having a love of self.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's not in a narcissistic way. It's just like, why not, baby? You need to be treated just as much as everything
You're
else.
precious.
Yeah,
So I think in on the ayahuasca tree, I don't remember if you caught this, but at some point, like a few times it came out, like somebody, one of the facilitators was saying, own your awesomeness.
cool.
Um, and there's a way to have this deep love affair with yourself that is not egoic in nature at all.
Yeah,
And you can, and I can also make sure I pay attention to any markers of where it might be becoming egoic. If I'm in a place of thinking myself better than,
yeah.
then then we've reached an unhealthy balance with my self-love. Because genuine self-love and acceptance is not better or worse than any other being on this planet.
I want to keep us on the subject of the church,
Mhm.
and because there's really a mass exodus happening with
Oh, there is?
religions just
Oh, in
across
general.
the world, yeah, are crumbling. Just
Yeah.
information is too accessible. We all
Yeah.
are in each other's backyards now. Yeah, for someone that's gone through this transition, I mean, what
Mm.
advice do you have? What questions might you have for listeners to, I don't
I
know, maybe
yeah.
open up, begin
Yeah.
some
I sincerely believe that every individual on this planet has their own path, like,
yeah,
and so
this path could work.
yeah, and so I know like that my exit from the church may parallel and resonate with some, and it may be completely and wildly different than others. Just honoring like the multiplicity of paths and
Yeah,
lived experiences that an individual can have. Um, there, so there isn't anything that I could say to just like as a blanket statement
sure.
beyond that of just of breathe and trust and know inside of yourself, have awareness to see where the feelings are shifting towards, and if it's shifting towards bitterness, if it's not edifying your soul, to leave. um, then
It's a common word in Mormon speak.
yeah, edify the soul if it
Edify.
doesn't feed it. Because my leaving, it was challenging, but I was so sure that it was time to go. not sure in my brain, just sure in my heart. Um, and I so deeply want to live this life being loving and kind towards everyone. I wanted that even when I was a Mormon, that
Yeah.
as I left, like I did not want to process my leaving through anger and bitterness. And so it was more of like a um grief and pain kind of
Yes.
thing.
Yes.
But that's what I'm learning too, is that anger and bitterness are just a wall that,
They're secondary.
yeah, so leave the church and be mad at it all you want, but you have to choose eventually.
How's that working out for you?
Yeah, choose eventually to let that, because that's a clever wall. Like, be mad at that organization
Yeah.
so that you don't have to feel what's really under there,
Yeah.
because anger is just,
It's so easy.
yeah, it's just grief unmasked,
Yeah.
and or grief with a mask. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd say just leave, and then just really leave. Like, don't give a fuck about what's going on there. There's no need when the heart is really centered on what a human needs.
Listen
So
to it.
you listen to it, and then also note that the heart doesn't require any dramatic defense.
Yeah.
It doesn't ask me to turn around and point back the other direction and say, you're wrong, I'm right.
Right. Or you need to give some reason, some
Yeah. Or
like
that I,
we tell our kids, like, hey, if you're ever in a situation where you feel uncomfortable, you tell us and we can go. No questions
yeah,
asked. It's like
yeah,
we want to encourage our kids and each other to be following those internal.
yeah, follow the heart.
Yeah.
Um, that's a wild concept when you grow up in a dogma, because the dogma has taught you to trust this externalization.
Mm.
That in the church that I grew up in, the externalization was two things. It was the Holy Ghost, a spirit, non-corporeal entity outside of myself, and a heavenly Father. And these were the places I went to get wisdom. Um, and so I think that is this in these days when I look through and I'm like, these are reasons why I would never go back. I didn't know that they were the reasons why I left. Like, I just felt like I
Sure.
wanted to
Just
love more and I couldn't do it
sure.
with the rules. Um,
The unfolding is
yeah.
deep. It'll keep going.
Yeah. And so
Anyway.
now I'm in this with that space of annoyed towards a dogma that teaches people, it disconnects us with our internal knowing.
Yeah.
You go to the external God to get the answers.
Yeah.
And then to know that, like, I to be reconnected with the truth that, like, that was all in me all along. Like,
Right.
that I had a really good cry about that, like, just being like, how crazy that I believed for years that the answers were somewhere other than inside of me.
Bearded white.
Yeah.
Jesus God.
Yeah. Um, and I mean, those are the names that are given to or used in the programs that men have designed. But honestly, I think that Jesus, as an ascended master, never intended any of that at all.
Me either. I mean, it's comical to see what Christianity has become. You look at his relationship with the Pharisees, and he was trying to point them away from the dogma. Yeah, he tried to lead people to their own hearts.
And then if I were, I don't think if you go to him and be like, "Hey, I need an answer to my question," in the LDS framework, like we interpret like his answer as like giving an answer, but all he did was tell a story.
Yeah.
And that's the beautiful thing about storytelling, conversations, music, is that
Yeah.
it's not actually giving an edict one way or the other. It's presenting a
Literature.
story that makes you go inside yourself and take your own interpretation of the
Feel.
story to make your
Mhm.
choice about your thing. And I don't think there was ever and so that's one of those things where I'm like, I miss that, or that's the most, it gives me the most sorrow about people who are still in it, is that they don't get to trust themselves. They don't get to know their own hearts, how to listen to the language of
Yeah.
their own heart. And
Wow. It's just painful.
it is painful. And the immediate externalization of any accountability for life circumstances.
Yeah.
Um, I am struggling right now because Satan is tempting me.
Right.
An externalization of accountability. Like,
Right.
there's no willingness to be like, man, I'm struggling right now, and really own it and feel it and just like
Exactly.
be in the
Get up and do
extraordinary
something.
existence of it, and then make a change for your
Yeah.
life. It immediately is like, oh, I feel a little bit of pain. I feel a little bit of sorrow. My life, that it's Satan.
Yep.
And it's the same with joy. Like it goes both ways. The human is actually robbed of the being able to wholly and completely experience the human emotions of bliss and grief. Because if it's joy, then it's a gift from God. So even your joy is externalized in its
Right.
accountability. Like
Right.
you don't get to, none of it's coming from within you. It's all coming at you from
Right.
either a negative entity or a positive anthropomorphized male deity.
Right.
Um,
It's like maybe you got infinite joy and love and compassion in you.
those are the places that are really cool to go ask questions,
Yeah.
you know, and see what comes up. This did tie back to advice for others. The advice is that when an individual leaves, to get as fast as possible to self-love and
Mm.
self-acceptance so that
A
you
lot of
can,
shame to track through often.
yeah, so much shame to track through, but if you can just make that like, okay, I'm leaving this organized dogma or religion and I'm holding firm in my mind the clear intention is that I will love myself no matter what.
Yeah.
Um, and that I will breathe and I will just love and accept myself. And then I feel like no matter what happens after you leave, you will be perfectly aligned with a life of joy, and a life of healing, of working through and shedding old ideas and programs.
Yeah.
Get to the self love as fast as possible.
Cool.
So you can be guided by your heart outside of the church you
Yeah.
grew up in.
Fuck them.
Yeah.
Stop listening to them.
Yeah.
Listen to you.
Fuck them with a cute little kiss.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, that's my style.
No, the fuck
Mm,
them is, of
yeah.
course.
Be like, bye.
I don't hate any
Yeah.
creature of this earth.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I want to circle back to something you mentioned when discussing your relationship with your mom. This concept of honoring people's vote when it's authentic. Now, you mentioned that this idea came from a program you just went through, a program called Impact. And this particular portion of the program or step, I think, was called Quest. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience with Impact and the aim of this program and its effect?
Okay. Um, well, I am talking about it because I went through it as I signed up and paid for it and went through it as a participant. And um, it's a program that is, especially the first part of it, which is called Quest. It is designed to um, it's designed to get an individual to see within themselves things they haven't been seeing, like very clever walls, the games that we play, roles that we've taken on. Mostly it, and so to make a person aware of that, um, you
All the way the ego hides
yeah,
itself.
the way the ego hides it. So then what impact training does in particular Quest is that it creates very uncomfortable situation,
Mhm.
um like nothing immoral or wrong, like it's you standing and talking and somebody asking you questions, but they are asking you like,
Pointed.
yeah, right to it questions. They're watching as like you deflect or as, and I say, and one of the things that they actually teach there that I really love is they encourage people to change their vocabulary from when they're describing something as being a you to being an I.
Mm.
And I've always loved that. Like I used to teach that way too. Um, in my
It's,
religious past as a Sunday school teacher, like we're not going to talk about us or them, where you can talk about you.
mm,
Um, like, and so
love
I'm going
that.
to switch that language a little bit. So
Yeah.
when I went to Impact, like I was there uh, to really see parts of myself that seemed clever or were hidden away. And or mostly just because my heart wanted me there. I actually didn't know going into it that that's what I was going to get out of it. Like my heart just wanted me to go, and my brain was like, I have no idea why I'm here. And I actually think I said that at the training, and the facilitator got like an inch from my face, and she's like, "That's a lie." So anytime somebody would use the words "I don't know,"
Yeah.
that she'd be like, "That's a lie," because the brain doesn't know, but the heart always knows.
Yeah.
So impact training, it's a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, you are in this container that is activating walls and
Trying to
egoic
push your
games.
buttons.
Yeah, it's activating them. And to the degree that you're willing to get up and participate to have them be activated, because no,
Sure.
it feels so awful. And
Right.
my ego felt so right that I
Mhm.
was like, and the story that it had was so justifiable and um
Clever, clever.
so clever. And just that was like, these people, this ideology, like, um, you don't know me, you can't give me that feedback, all kinds of things. But without disclosing too much, because that's also a big thing with impact, is that they don't want you to know too much about the processes that they give going into it, because then the mind is prepared to be egoic about it. What's most important is to just say that impact training is a space where people in a maybe in an expanded consciousness space. It's people for who are not in expanded consciousness, but I'm feeling like we're talking to people that meditate. So it's very easy to be like, I mean, even myself, I'm like, I've been doing so much inner work. I've done Vipassana. I love meditation. Like, I don't need to go to this like quest training thing.
Yeah, your ego
I
is
don't
now
need to
on
have my
the
ego.
spiritual ego.
Yeah, my friend Misty calls it that too. Like, just that, like, sometimes when her friends from her community come to a graduation of somebody, how quickly the spiritual ego comes up.
Yeah,
And that happens from probably like kind of the expanded consciousness side or the non-sectarian side, but it also happens with the sectarian side. Like, somebody will be like, I don't need to go to that. I have my church.
for sure.
And
Yeah,
but Quest and Impact is designed to bring you face to face with some of the parts of yourself, a wall or a story or a role, all of these egoic in nature that are blocking you from being in your most vulnerable, truest heart space, which is the real you,
yeah.
the real me.
They're like a giant mirror.
Yes. A
So you
big giant mirror that you paid tickets to have them really bring you right up to
every
your
angle
stuff.
and yeah.
And you can't even be mad at them, because
Mhm.
what they're doing is they're just asking questions that brings up
Right.
and then getting you to become aware of it.
Defensive.
Mhm. It
Well,
comes off as defensive because the ego's trying to defend.
exactly. Just it's
But
just trying to
yeah,
protect.
there are some people
Mhm.
who they take different egoic strategies rather than being defensive, as or they'll like socially like do that kind of social awkward giggle and look around the room, and the facilitator will be like, why are you laughing about this? Is this funny?
Yeah.
Because they're like looking for external. So that's another.
Release of some kind. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, I already know this, I don't need it, or an avoidant tactic, I think, just to be like, okay, so clearly standing up and sharing um invites the facilitator in to work with me on something. And there are other processes and exercises that they do through it, but it's all aimed towards that one thing. Get super clear on things that I can't see in my ego, where my
Yeah.
ego's trying to protect me from, which I get it.
Yeah. I love that. I'm excited to go try it. Like I told you earlier, I've known a couple close to me that they did it and both
Yeah.
said it was life changing.
Yeah. Even if even if you go through it and you don't look back and you're like, I really don't like their methodology or whatever, like um the changed state of awareness, the changed state of
The thoughts on
accountability.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, like I am accountable. And for them, accountability is a neutral thing. I'm just counting the events of my life. I'm accountable to them rather than I'm a victim to them. Like,
Love
and
it.
so introducing this accountability is, and just other things, is deeply empowering. And in particular, and everybody's situation is very different going into it. And I perceive that in myself. I remember looking at the people who were in the training with me, and I felt very clearly that some of them were there to work through profound grief.
Right.
Um, yeah, or
Anger.
anger, and so, but those weren't the things that I wasn't seeing them in me, but I also was trying to be, see if there were things I couldn't see. And as the first day got going, what the message came up from my heart was, you are here to deal with fear.
Mm.
Like I've already had great experiences with the Celeste Fest crew by going to these sacred grief tending ceremonies that are part of their experience, um, and those were poignant and beautiful. And the first one was just deep release, and then the second time it was more of me being a kind of a human grounding pole while other people released grief. So
Mm.
worked through grief. I've had some great experiences with anger to the degree that my existence gets to do anger. I
Yeah,
don't,
you're not an angry
I'm
person.
not.
Yeah.
But it's when it comes up, it's like this rare jewel
Yeah.
to my soul. I'm like, whoa, look at this emotion.
Yeah.
Like, this is so rare for you. Isn't it extraordinary kind of thing?
Mm.
And and so I my mind wanting to understand, like being like, okay, I'm here for fear, and I can feel that. Um, I would take breath and like almost look down at the center of my chest and just kind of ask myself while I'm in this training, how does the heart deal with fear? Because the fear was so alive, and I had so many fear stories just being in that room, like, um, and just being in a back in the vicinity of an organization that had the remnants of just like churchiness to it. And so and my own fear about being pulled back into an organization that's going to tell me how to think and be, and so that became a fear that was like, get away from this place. Yeah, I think I'm good on. I've told you all I could tell you about Quest is that
Yeah.
the mirror that came up for me, the ego part was fear, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is really fun. I love you.
I, I need forehead.
Okay. Mm.
Mm. Good peace hug.
Mhm.
Annalise often comes into my bed at night asking for a peace hug.
Oh, I love that. That seems very much like what Annalise would do. Peace hug.
Hmm.
Those guys are going to be fun to watch. I mean, they are fun to watch, but just like the extraordinary humans, and then what kind of extraordinary trouble they could probably get themselves into, and see how that goes for them as well.
Yeah, I keep trying to encourage them to be more rebellious, but
Make more
they
mistakes.
won't.
They won't. What? What? Come on,
I told
kids.
you at dinner every time I leave the house, okay, kiddos, remember, play with knives and
Yeah.
fire and
Yeah.
gasoline and
They're just not going to do it.
yeah.
Hmm. Well, I'm sure some epic mistakes will come sometime.
They admit the cutest little lies.
Hmm. They do?
Oh yeah.
Like what?
Well, when I say they, it's hard. I want to like be able to talk about my kids, but I also don't want to pin them down to like
Yeah.
a story,
Yeah.
you know?
That's so wise.
And it's kind of obvious sometimes when I'm talking about a certain
Uh,
kid,
yeah.
kids, and you, yeah,
Yeah. That's cool though. I'm glad that you're aware of that as a parent. That um you're the tiny humans that you're ushering into existence in this space are not beholden to one particular point in time when they acted one particular way,
yeah,
to allow the fluidity of just being able to be whatever.
yeah,
That's why I like the notion that the only thing that's permanent in this house is love. Like,
yeah,
you can decide that you hate Cheerios and love Cheerios the next day, or you can say this is how I feel about myself, and then 2 seconds later change your mind. Like,
mhm,
nothing has to be stuck in
yes,
one identity or personality.
yes,
So that's cool that you just also are naturally doing that with your kids.
yeah.
Yeah.
The radical thing I do is I treat my kids like adults and like how I would respect
Mm,
any adult or talk to any adult or,
yeah.
just,
Yeah. So my experience of you and your family is that you hold each other responsible and accountable on the same level. You're all equal, and I think that's what I'm interpreting you mean by is if you treat them as adults. But what I've also observed is that they are not adults, and you guys just let them play. and you let their emotions roll. And
Yeah.
so there is a equality of respect and love as if they were adults, but they are completely honored to be children.
They're the
Yeah.
freest fun. Yeah, I was telling Candace today, you know, I go up to the kitchen when my kids eat and I make a salad and just depending on the mood of the room or whatever, I may give a philosophy lesson or I don't know, we'll talk about something goofy to
Mm.
I don't know, whatever space needs. And I told her sometimes like today I just don't say anything. I just come up and I listen. And my kids were just in this insane, creative, imaginative story that it was just so real. You could tell I wasn't even there, you know?
Yeah. That's they're
Play.
creating,
Yeah.
and it's play.
They're never really bored. They know how to play.
Yeah. Yeah. And may that stay with them always.
Yeah.
I'm on a path of relearning that.
Yeah.
And so,
Me too.
yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to explore a bit deeper a discussion we had earlier about shame because I sense there may be a potential disagreement here, but I expect we might come to a similar conclusion. So let me just open this exploration with a thought experiment proposed by Sam Harris, and then we could just go from there. In this thought experiment, suppose a mother takes a bath with her newborn baby on her chest, and the mother falls asleep while she's taking the bath and wakes to find that her baby has drowned. Now, suppose we have invented a pill that as soon as you take the pill, all your shame or guilt disappears. So, the question to explore in this thought experiment is when do we give the mother this pill? An hour after? A day after? A month? A year? 10 years? Do we ever give it to her? So, I don't know. There seems to be some utility in this emotion, which we might actually call remorse. And I don't know, later we might want to tease that apart from shame and guilt, but I'll let you respond to this.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, that I see where you're coming from. The utility in that it helps me as a human know, like, not to repeat that event, like I experienced that event or that series of events or something that happened. It was painful and that I was the cause of some of my own pain and or someone else's suffering, and that there is like shame and sadness with that.
Yeah.
So the utility of a thing, at least in the physical world, the utility of your computer, this microphone. Um, Eventually, that utility breaks down. You have to get a new microphone, get a new laptop. And so, with emotions like shame and remorse, holding on to something past its utility, past its value.
Sure.
And so, I think that's the thing is knowing
That's the sweet
how.
spot of when to take the pill.
Yeah. Or and then I love this thought experiment, but the externalization of something that needs to be taken from the outside inward to get rid of the thing,
Totally. Yeah.
um, is a like just because not just playing with it with this concept of like, well, um,
But yeah, I don't
when
like
it's
that image
when
either.
it's time to
Like,
quote
can't
unquote
take a
take the pill,
pill.
it's not
Yeah.
really taking a pill. It's
Yeah.
to get rid of something, going outwards to get something to change my inwards. It's when
Good
I've
point.
recognized within myself that that the shame and the sorrow and the grief um, need to be fully felt, I go inward and I fully feel them. I am the pill. I'm the one who
Yeah.
goes and looks at them in the face,
That loving
sees them,
attention.
feels them wholly,
Mhm.
and then finds some form of self acceptance where I get to move forward, and there is the memory of pain, but I am not in a state of suffering at the memory of
Exactly,
it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I draw a parallel with compassion and empathy.
Mm,
Empathy, sometimes we can drown in our empathy, and it's not helpful for anyone,
mm,
really. But compassion, you are still grounded in this wish, maybe free from suffering, maybe happy. And
yeah.
so, yeah, that's how I
Yeah.
kind of see remorse. It's
Yeah.
I'm not beating myself up every time. It's
Okay.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's been transformed. It's
Yeah.
been under love's
Under loves.
attention. Yeah.
Since busting out of the framework of my religious upbringing and getting to explore other forms of thought and philosophy, I do um, deeply love the word transmute. I'd never heard that word until I was in walking in different circles outside of Mormonism, but
Tell me more.
transmute. So like to it's similar as transform, but transform is can sometimes be interpreted as a word where this thing that was this is goes through a process by which it now is completely another thing. It's transformed.
Okay.
But transmute is here's this thing that that still remained parts of itself, but then mutated into a new thing. So it didn't completely lose old parts. It just um,
I love
took
that.
those old parts and then was able to synthesize change in something new. So you're not
Right.
throwing the thing out entirely. I'm transformed. I'm not a. That's kind of like saying that I'm not anything I was in the past. But to say I'm or to transmute, to take and transmute is also taking one thing and really morphing it into another. And love does that. Like
Yeah.
love
It does.
transmutes grief into profound
Everything.
gratitude and joy.
Mm-hmm.
And love transmutes. Like it can take a thing and just um, make it anew.
Yeah.
Yeah, without completely obliterating what it was before. It still honors what was, allows for something new to come in the present.
That touches on 2 points we had talked about earlier today. I called you a Popperian because Karl Popper, the philosopher, he was very critical of any frame that said we burn it down and start from the ashes. It's like, no, it's piecemeal.
It's a piecemeal. Yeah, that the real love comes from transmuting what is, to look at what is in the world exactly as it is and love it. To love what is will usher in the biggest and most joyous changes for humanity rather than the to look what is and say, oh, this is fucked. I'm going to burn it all down and start anew.
Yeah.
Um, that's just perpetuating more of the same.
Yeah.
And
If
so,
you go back to Adam and Eve every time,
yeah,
you'll make it no further than Adam and Eve.
yeah. And I firmly believe that humanity, all of us here bopping around on two legs, that we have the ability to usher in great change for ourselves
Yeah.
by choosing to love what is instead of judge what is. Um, and it seems paradoxical. I can feel how others might want to argue against that of like how and bring up really painful things that are happening in the world and be like, how could I possibly love that? And then how would loving that possibly move towards change? Um,
That brings up an interesting frame that I found useful
mm,
from Goldstein, because they were doing a retreat right after 9/11, and his retreat center is in not far from New York. It's on
okay.
the East Coast. And so a bunch of people from New York were attending the retreat. And when it came to the meta, spreading your love across all beings, they couldn't, understandably so.
Mm,
And so Goldstein offered, well, it doesn't always need to take that shape of may you be happy. It's may you be free of cruelty, may you
yeah,
be free of hatred,
yeah,
free of anger.
yeah.
And maybe that's the thing that connects you to the meta.
Mm. It's learning to love what is.
Yeah.
And then finding in that path of that path of love that there's this whole avenue of healing that couldn't be found unless you loved it first.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Candice. Tonight really has been a pleasure. You feed a intellectual part of me that gets very hungry.
Mm. Yeah, this was a beautiful conversation. It's also fun to go into these spaces as intellectuals and then to wholeheartedly acknowledge what the hell do I know?
Kick in the cosmic
Yes.
sandbox without a clue of
Yes.
anything.
So just being like, this is awesome. But the mind never did meet a cognition it didn't love.
What was the line I liked in your meditation we did as we stepped into Molly?
Sitting around the fire.
Yes,
Yeah.
the line about the doubt. Don't doubt.
Oh yeah. Look, it was about letting go of things that you don't need. Like
You
you
don't
don't
need a
need
doubt
doubt
because you already know
because
it's.
you already know it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the cool thing is that when people listen to your podcast or they listen to me jabbering about stuff, there are words and forms being happening, but it's mostly just the best wish is that whatever I say, that there's some kind of resonance that touches your inner knowing where you hear a message from yourself
Yeah.
while listening to the messages that I'm
Exactly.
giving. Because at the end of the day, my messages they're not for you or for the world. They're for you to look inside yourself and find your own.
Yeah, that reminds me of a poem or a piece out of Khalil Gibran's The Prophet. It's titled On Teaching. Then said a teacher, "Speak to us of teaching." And he said, "No man can reveal to you aught but that which already lies half asleep in the dawning of your knowledge. The teacher who walks in the shadow of the temple among his followers gives not of his wisdom, but rather of his faith and his lovingness. If he is indeed wise, he does not bid you enter the house of wisdom, but rather leads you to the threshold of your own mind." You tend to emphasize instead of mind, heart.
Yeah.
And I like that. Anyway. And even as each one of you stand alone in God's knowledge, so must each one of you be alone in his knowledge of God and in his understanding of the earth.
Mm.
Well, Candice, thank you.
I love you.
I love you. Until next time.